Hello and welcome to Electric Sheep Season 2, Episode 10. My name's Carl Sykes, and with me this week are Paul Andrews.
Hello.
And Elizabeth Jones.
Hello.
Just us podcasting this week. So what we thought we'd do is we'd look at the subject of using technology to develop and promote your own online business. Now, there's a particular reason we've decided to look at this subject area, and for those who've listened to previous podcasts, you will know that Paul is venturing out into the big, wide, scary world of his own online business venture. And I know Paul will tell us a little bit about that in a moment, so I won't divulge too much at the moment. But essentially what we thought we'd do is we'd look at some technologies that if you, the listener, are looking to start your own online business, you might find that they help you along the way and just make life a little bit easier for you. So perhaps what we'll do first of all is just get Paul to very briefly, in a nutshell, tell us what it is he's doing at the moment in terms of creating his own business. And then we can get into the nuts and bolts of what technologies are good. So over to you.
Okay, well, the idea behind it has basically come about because I've been doing this job here at the University of South Wales, and before that the University of Wales Newport, and before that other colleges that I was working in as an e-learning manager. I've been doing this job for about 10 years now, and the idea behind it is that my role has always been one of I go and sit down with people and I say, tell me what you want to do, tell me what you want to achieve. If you're a teacher, tell me how you want your pupils or your students to learn, and then I would take it upon myself to go away and find tools and resources that people can then use. But I've always focused on free and open source stuff, essentially, mainly because I wanted there to be a very low barrier to entry. Because it's not. There's not much point in saying to people, "Oh yeah, there's this resource. Oh, but by the way, it's going to cost you X thousands of pounds,
Absolutely,
or it only works on a particular platform, or what have you." So what I've done over the past kind of 5 years is I've been running my own website, which was originally set up because 5 years ago there wasn't really a website where people could go to get a list of free tools that they could use. And those that did exist had like 100 resources or 1,000 resources. And what I found was by talking to educators and colleagues at the time, it was almost like there was too much choice for them. They go here and they're like 75 tools for editing photographs, and the response from most people was, yeah, but just show me one or two. Just give me one or two that actually work. Yeah. So that's why I created the website, this thing called Paul's E-Learning Resources, and it's kind of came about from that, really. So the website it has been bubbling along for 5 years, and it's just been showcasing free and open source stuff. But as you say, now I'm going to be leaving university. I've decided to see if I can try and kind of broaden the profile of it and say to people, well, okay, the free tools are still on the website. You can get those, no problem at all. But if you want kind of me as an individual to come in and actually work with you to give you some advice or guidance or training or support, or even if you haven't got time to use the tools yourself, actually do the work for you, then that's basically what I'm trying to offer to people. So it's almost like I'm offering my services that I've been doing internally, but now kind of everywhere. Yeah,
I mean, you preempted my first question there, which was going to be people who might be listening might be thinking, well, why am I going to pay for something that's free?
Yeah.
But like you just said, it's not the item in terms of the software package, whatever it is that you're paying for. It's the expertise to show you how to make the best use out of that item. Yeah. Save you spending 50 hours practicing to use it and making lots and lots of mistakes along the way. It's better to kind of be funneled down the right path and shown how to make the most in the quickest way in the quickest time possible.
Yeah. I mean, I know there will be people listening to this who will think, well, that doesn't apply to me. I don't need that, and that's fine. That's no problem at all. But that's why I put all the free stuff on there, so that people who are confident about using technology and like to just kind of jump in with both feet first, great. All the stuff's still there for you. But for many people, certainly the people I've encountered over the last kind of decade, a lot of people prefer a more personal approach where you can sit down and say, right, come on, let's get a cup of tea, let's get some biscuits, sit down and have a bit of a chit-chat about what it is you want to do, and then maybe I'll sit next to you whilst you have a play around with the software. So it's almost like a safety net, essentially. Yeah. What
I like about your site, and I don't want this episode to come across as one great big plug for you, because essentially it is, but that's not really what we were looking at.
It wasn't my idea.
Yeah, no, it wasn't Paul's idea. That is true. I mean, the reason that I thought it would be good to kind of talk about this is because there will be other people who'll be listening who perhaps have wanted to go down the similar route of setting up something online. And we specifically look at online businesses in this particular instance, but setting something up online to showcase their particular talents, whatever they may be. but where do you start? What works for people to actually kind of get themselves out there, get their skills out there, and enable them to sell themselves to people, essentially.
I don't think it has to cover just online businesses. Sorry to interrupt, because lots of businesses that work in a day-to-day in the real world, I suppose, they need an online presence as
That's
well.
true. That is
so
true.
They're going to be using a lot of the same stuff to promote their website, to get their name out there for something that they do that's very practical.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, not meaning to exclude anybody who's listening and I don't know, is a fishmonger or whatever else, who might not necessarily assume with an online presence.
With £1 fish.
Yes. Exactly. Yes, but no. It's kind of, the hope is that this podcast will allow people to know the best routes to go down based upon your experience so far. Essentially, I mean, you've been working. I know your site's been up and running for about 5 years. You said, but essentially you've been working on this as a kind of a business idea for probably the last 4 or 5 months. Would you say maybe slightly longer?
I think I properly kind of started going for it. It was April.
Oh, okay, so only a few months.
Yeah,
then,
so
really.
it's not that long. But I mean, it'd been something that I've been kind of kicking around about. I had lots of ideas, but I kind of parked them a bit because I was like, well, no, I've got a full-time job to do. But certainly since April, I've been doing far too much work, to be honest. I mean, that's the thing that I kind of didn't maybe anticipate, was that you have to do an awful lot of work up front.
Right.
For any business, if your kind of venture has a fighting chance of survival. So I was kind of doing 12, 13, 14-hour days for about 2 months, and then I kind of eased off a little bit when I'd kind of a lot of the advice I've been given, certainly from kind of, I've got business mentors. Here in Newport in South Wales, we have a phenomenal team down at the Centre for Business. They're based in Newport City Centre. They've got offices in Cardiff and Swansea as well. But they give a whole lot of free kind of business advice and consultation stuff, and they've been fantastic. But one of the things they said to me from the get-go was, what's your unique selling point?
Yeah.
Because it's the other thing that I tended to find. I thought education liked its acronyms, but it turns out businesses like them too. So they go, what's your USP? What's your unique selling point? And so when I was kind of having to talk to them, what I was finding was that there wasn't any, and I still haven't found anyone out there that offers this service.
All right, okay.
I haven't.
Okay.
What I've found is some companies that specialise in very particular things. So, for example, there are companies that will specialise in Google, and they will focus on business to business. And there will be other people who will specialise in just giving training to home users. And there are companies that will give website training, say, to people who want to start up businesses. But there doesn't seem to be, and again, maybe I'm missing something because I've been looking left, right and centre. There doesn't seem to be at the moment a company that says, right, we're going to focus on free and open source and we're going to teach you how to do this stuff. But if you can't do it, we'll do it for you. Mm-hmm. So I haven't found anyone. So that's going to be my unique selling point, which is kind of allowed me to kind of distinguish myself from, I mean, there are a whole range of web design companies. You put in web design in your area, they'll all come up, and there's lots of IT training companies, but many of them will focus on Microsoft Office, on Microsoft solutions. There's not that many out there that are focusing on what I would call the newer kind of generation of software that's coming through.
Right.
It's still quite stayed in the kind of the old-fashioned, the traditional Microsoft way of doing things, and maybe for those of you who are familiar with the CLATE or the European Computer Driving License, it's that kind of model of, we're going to teach you how to do spreadsheets, we're going to teach you how to do word processing. So the way I've approached it is to try and come at it from a hybrid kind of thing, to actually say, rather than trying to focus on one market, I'm actually going for three. Focusing on saying education, business and home users. And it might well be that in 12, 18, 24 months' time, one of those markets hasn't gone anywhere.
Yeah, of course.
In which case, then I'm quite prepared to say, well, actually, I'll park that one and just focus on the ones that are.
Okay. Well, starting, if we kind of look at the way that you've got to the point you are now and
sure.
what you've done. I mean, you've actually been quite lucky in a sense. I mean, not saying you haven't put the hard work in the first place, but you've been quite lucky in a sense when you've got to the point that you want to create a business out of this. You've already got this very nicely built website that you've been working on for quite a lot of time. So it's not like you're having to create it from now, which is great. So obviously, for people who are perhaps looking to start a business from scratch, that's quite a lot of extra work that they have to do, whereas you had a longer period of time to collate this stuff together. Yeah. But let's kind of take it from the point that when you first decided you were going to turn your site into something bigger.
Sure.
I mean, what were the things that came into your head in terms of what you'd need to do to kind of take it beyond to the next step?
Yeah.
I know you've been going to sort of kind of sales sessions and meetings with business advisors, that sort of thing. But in terms of the technology side of things, I know, again, apps is something you looked at. So perhaps we can cover all of those things and just look at those areas and see what you've actually done to take it on to the next step.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, if I go up to the first thing I did, the first thing I was kind of advised to do was to actually go and do basically a whole lot of research. And you can do desk-based research. So you can go off onto government websites and get various statistics. You can go onto business websites and get stats about different markets, whatever market you're interested in. But what I did that's been really helpful is I use Google Drive forms and I created a little online survey. And what I did was I then, because I'm already quite active on things like Twitter and Facebook and all those kind of things, I then set up a Google Calendar alert that would that I could then have a repeating event, essentially. And then I used, we mentioned the free service IFT before, this IFT.com.
That's right.
I set up a rule in IFT that says, right, every time this event repeats on my calendar, take the details from that event and push it out to all of my social media places.
Right, okay.
So what happened was every day at a certain time, it would push out this message that said, I'm doing a bit of market research. If you've got 5 minutes, please could you fill this form in? And then if people clicked on the link on any of those social media outlets, they would then be taken to this Google Drive form, which was a little survey. It was deliberately very short, but it was branching. So the idea is if they answered a particular question in a particular way, they would then be taken to one set of questions.
Right.
If they answered that same question in another way, they'd be taken to a different set of questions.
Yeah.
So the idea behind it was basically trying to put feelers out in terms of, well, what were people looking for? What needs did they have that weren't being met, and more importantly, how much were they prepared to pay for those services? Because that was the one thing I genuinely didn't have a clue about, was in terms of how do I price? Yeah, where do I price this stuff? And so the nice thing is, I mean, I ran it for, I think it was about 8 weeks, and I got 50 responses, which, to be honest, I was quite pleased with. I didn't think I'd get that many. And the people who I've spoken to, I'm quite surprised that I got 50 responses. They were, oh, blimey, okay, fair enough. But that information was very, very valuable because that's allowed me to basically decide what my price point's going to be. And I've kind of structured my business model based on the data that I got from people. And the data I got from people, they came in from all kind of walks of life. Some were just private individuals, some were educators, some were people in business. So it's kind of that was the first thing. It was basically about, and I didn't necessarily have a preconceived notion about how much I was going to charge or even how I was going to package my services up. It was just a case of saying to people, well, what do you want?
Yeah.
You know. And basically kind of sitting down, looking at the data and going, right, okay, this is what I'm going to do because I can justify it because I've got this information in front of me. So Google Drive Forms was very, very useful to collect the data and to send those reminders out. Google Calendar combined with IFT. So I only had to set the event up once, and it then automated and pushed out.
Yeah, and I mean, this is we've talked about IFT, like you say, a few times previously anyway, and that's the fantastic thing about it, is that, you know, it frees up the time that we would spend continuously going back to your social networking sites and re-advertising something over and over again. It ties it all in together and automates that sort of send out every time you need it to. So, and I know we've mentioned IFT quite a bit, so I won't go into too much detail about what it's about, but the link, as always, will be on the website, so do have a look at it if it's something that might be of interest to you. So once you'd got the responses in that you needed,
Yep.
I mean, did they seem to kind of point towards a particular need? Was there something that sort of repeatedly came out as a distinct need from these responses, or was it just kind of fairly varied in terms of what people were after?
Yeah, the main response from people was essentially that they would like someone to show them what to do, but remotely. So,
Right,
so they didn't want. I mean, although I said, look, yes, I can come to your house and this, that, and the other. A lot of people just said, you know what, it'd be really handy if I could just log on somewhere and just have a live video chit chat.
Yeah.
You show me what to do, I do it.
And I mean, that's not just great for them, but it works better for you as well. I mean, the last thing you want is someone coming to you and saying, "I really want some help for an hour, and I'm in Lincoln or whatever." I mean, it's like, no, not
so
doable.
yeah, it's not really worth it. So that was good. I mean, the biggest. I mean, what I'm finding at the moment is certainly with businesses, is that they don't really know what they want because they don't know what's possible.
Right.
I'm finding that's a big kind of. Because again, a lot of people I talk to who are operating that world have that very kind of traditional view of technology. So when I start talking to people about Google Apps, for example, Google Apps for Business, they're like, "Oh, I didn't even know this existed," I've been speaking to my business advisors, and they didn't know it existed. So
it's the preconceived idea that you, if you're a business, you have a website that has a couple of photos and a bit of text.
Yep.
And that's it.
And Microsoft Word and Excel and all that kind of stuff on your computer, and you might engage in social media, but it's very kind of at the moment. I think a lot of people struggle with social media because they don't quite get it. So there's all this thing about you need to be on social media, you need to be putting things out, but it seems like a lot of people. Because they aren't aware of services like IFT, for example, they think it's a lot of hard work for very little return because they haven't set up all those automated systems. And then finally on the education front, what I'm finding is a lot of the schools who I'm talking to, it's not so much the pedagogy. Because, I mean, I always go in and I say, look, the pedagogy has to lead the technology. It's got to be first. But what a lot of people are saying to me is actually they want their administrative processes and their logistics sorted out because at the moment most of them are people and paper powered. And those things are like a ball and chain around their leg. And they're stopping the schools from fully engaging in all the activities they want to do that require people and time and energy because that people and time and energy resource is being drained by these big cumbersome systems that have evolved over a number of years as a response to kind of government saying you need to produce this data and that data, but you tend to find there hasn't really been a point where they've sat down with a systems analyst and gone, right, okay, this is what we need. Everything's a bit of a patchwork and a bit of a mishmash because they've done the best that they can whilst also doing the important business of teaching and looking after their students and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so I mean, once you've got your results in then from your sort of Google survey, and it gives you some sort of guideline as to what people are after and what they're looking to spend and that sort of stuff. What was your next move? I mean, where did you go from there, and how did you feel you could take the next step and the next stage in terms of preparing this?
Okay, so once I got the data, I mean, the next thing that I had to do was write a business plan, and there's not much technology involved in that other than, I mean, I use Google Drive for my business plan purely because one of the things they say to you when you start doing this is your business plan has to be a live document. It can't be something you just type and file away and put on a shelf somewhere. Yeah. So the second they said live document to me, I was like, right, I've got to use Google Drive for this. There's no question about it. So I've basically done my business plan in Google Drive. I've shared that with my business advisor who can access that anytime they want to. Brilliant, and they can see it live, and I can and they come back to me and go, have you considered changing this? And it's nice because there's no back and forth of attachments. It's just a little email, text message, whatever, and I can make those changes. But then once I'd got the business plan in place, it was basically a case of going off to my website and then putting almost the shop front out.
Yes, because it was set up very much as a kind of it wasn't set up as a business because that's how you weren't running it. It was set up as this is my site. Type what you're looking for, I'll take you to it. But actually, yes, it was then changing the front face of your website.
Absolutely.
And making it something more business focused. And I don't think you've mentioned at the start of this, but what do you use? What do you use to sort of host your website?
Yeah.
Or how
I'm using Google Sites.
Right. Okay.
There's two really popular ones out there. WordPress is incredibly popular, particularly with small to medium enterprises, or SMEs as they're called. But the reason I like Google is because of the way it integrates with all of Google's other services.
Right.
And it also makes things like search engine optimization. And again, people use the acronym SEO for that. Search engine optimization is dead simple with Google Sites, whereas with others, it's fine, but it's a little bit more of a faff,
right? Okay.
To be honest. Whereas with Google Sites, it kind of does it all for you, so it's quite simple. And of course, it's built by Google.
Yeah.
So it kind of works. It plays nicely with all of their stuff.
Of course. So you kind of you got your website. What how much time and effort did it take to kind of change things from what it was to the site that it's become at the moment? Was that a lot of effort?
It was a fair amount of work, and it was because basically I had to go back to the drawing board in terms of the actual style and the theme of the thing because it wasn't. I would say it wasn't professional, but it was quite homespun before. And kind of the colours and the fonts and all that, they kind of reflected that.
Right, okay.
People who've been looking at my site over the years, it's changed dramatically over the 5 years. It normally gets an annual kind of refresh and an update. But it's never looked this slick, to be honest, because I had to sit down and kind of really think about what message I wanted to communicate, and I also went and had a look at what other companies were doing, particularly companies who were also using Google Sites, and I was looking at what had they done, how had they used it. So I drew a lot of elements in from other businesses because they had features that I liked. So I thought, I'm gonna nab that. That's a really good idea. But it was about essentially, yes, I had to change the color scheme. I changed the font. The navigation system completely changed. The front page had to be completely changed as well, because rather than it just being, hey, some free resources, it had to kind of have like a mission statement type thing on the front, and all that kind of stuff. So there was a fair bit of work. I mean, what it essentially amounted to is, if you imagine I had the old site, I had to build layers around that to make the rest of the site, and then I had to switch the home page. So rather than it pointing to the resources bit, which is still there, it now points to a different page, which is like a landing point for people, and says, right, are you education, are you business, are you home? Whereas before it was quite, it had lots of icons. So the idea was, and at the time, the reason why I changed it was because I was trying to make it work well with tablet devices. But then I quickly realised that actually wasn't going to work if I wanted a more professional-looking site. It wasn't going to look slick enough.
Right.
So what I actually did was I went over to, there's a free website called Pixabay. It's
okay.
Pixabay, pixabay.com. That website, and that has a whole load of free, high-resolution public domain images that can be used for business, commercial purposes, or not. And you don't have to give links back or anything like that. And I found basically all of the images I've used on my website now, particularly on the front page, are all from Pixabay. They're all from there. And that's been invaluable, because I kind of stumbled upon this nice kind of glass logo. It had like glass tubes with like gas being shoved through it and heated up. So there was a nice kind of spectrum. So I thought, right, I'll have that back quite by accident. That became my official logo, if you like. And then there were 3 pictures I've used for kind of business, education, home. Again, they're all from Pixabay. But what I wanted to do, I wanted to change them slightly. So I then used a free website called Sumo Paint.
Okay.
A bit like Photoshop, but it's all web-based and it's free.
Yeah.
And that allowed me to take those pictures in and just put some text at the bottom, just rather than just having the the simple pictures. So I mean, it took a long time, and it if I'd have known what I was doing straight away, it wouldn't have taken that long. But there's been a lot of kind of trial and error, suck it and see a little bit. So it's been evolving rapidly over the last 3 months. Because I've put it up there, had a look, got some feedback from people, changed it again. So it's almost there now. But yeah, it's been a fair old slog to get there. So I mean, you can see why websites take so long to build.
Yes,
because I'm just one person. If you were a business or a company or a corporation with lots of people who have got an input, it must be an absolute nightmare to try and get that kind of single vision down on a
That is true.
on a web
That
page.
is true. But then I suppose if you're a single person on your own, you're doing it, then equally you can be your own worst critic. At least if you've got a number of other
Yes,
people
this is
kind of voting and whatever else. Yeah, I'm sure you've gone back many times and worked and reworked sections until you're absolutely as happy as you can be with them.
Totally. Yeah.
I know we've mentioned in a previous podcast about sort of the app builders that you've been using, and I know you've created apps in a number of stores, but I wonder if we could, for those either who haven't heard the previous podcasts or for those who want a refresher, I wonder if we can kind of just quickly go over how you went down the decision of making the apps and what you used and
Sure.
what's available now for your particular site.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Well, I mean, there wasn't a year that went by whilst I was working for the University of Wales Newport that someone didn't approach me and said, can you make me an app? And my response was always no. It wasn't something that interested me. I was much more interested in learning technologies rather than learning how to code an app.
Yeah.
So I didn't really see the need for it. But then I came across this website called iBuildApp. And it's a free service. They do have paid-for options as well. But it basically lets you construct an Android or an iOS app, a native app that will sit on the app stores for free. And the deal is, how they make their money is that when you make an app using their system, they put adverts at the top of your app, and if people click on those adverts, they get a cut of the money.
Right,
So
okay.
that seems like a fair deal to me.
Yeah.
So essentially what this iBuild app let me do in under 2.5 hours was start from no app to having a finished app on the Google Play Store. The Apple Store was a bit more convoluted because that's Apple for you. But essentially 2.5 hours using their templates, I was able to go from nothing to having an app on the Google Play Store, and I was like, okay, there might be something in this. So that the main reason why I've got it now, essentially, is that if people install it, it gives them quick access to everything that I've got on the site, formatted in a mobile-friendly way.
Yeah.
But it also sends out push alerts. So if I add new free tools and resources to the website, it sends a little pop-up message to them on their phone going, oh, by the way, But granted, I mean, if people are following me on Twitter or Facebook or Google Plus or LinkedIn or any of the other things that I'm on, it's the same stuff.
Yeah.
The one thing I've played around with, but it hasn't had much traction yet, is there's a little kind of community forum that's specific to the app.
Okay.
But at the moment, that's an experiment by me to see if it's going to work or not. But I'm kind of, the jury's still out on that one.
Yeah, but I suppose it's early days, isn't it, at the moment? I mean, your apps have been up and running officially for, only a couple of weeks, I'm guessing, isn't it? So, I guess it's early days yet, and hopefully, because I know you've got a fairly large sort of social networking presence, which we'll touch on in a little while. But, I mean, I'm guessing that once you, kind of get that information out there as much as possible, perhaps these forums will take off.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, to be honest, the main reason why I wanted to use it was to learn how to do it myself, because I thought, see if it's possible. I mean, the main application, I can see it being very helpful if you're a small business, particularly because it will let you do things like make table reservations if you're a restaurant. They have like modules that you can get, and all the modules are free. But particularly for education, and particularly for educational events and conferences, it's one of those things where if you're running an event, you can use this iBuild app system to make an app that's unique to the event that you're running, the conference that you're running. And because it's a free system, I mean, essentially the app's kind of like a throwaway thing, but it's like, right, okay, we're going to have a Twitter hashtag, and all the tweets on the Twitter hashtag will be displayed live in the app. So if you're not quite sure what's going on with Twitter, or you're not on Twitter, download the app, hit a button, you can see everything that's there. You can access videos, you can see the PowerPoints. It gives people the opportunity to kind of make kind of time-related or event-related apps very, very quickly.
Yeah, and you can see why that never happened before when you had to sort of code it all from scratch. You wouldn't make something that's throwaway. You'd make something that was going to be there for a lifetime, or we were certain for a few years anyway. So, but this is great. I mean, it's fantastic to have the option to be able to, if you're an institution or a business or whatever it is that runs maybe 3 or 4 conferences a year, it's great to be able to just create something in a couple of hours, get it out there, get the message across, use it for that conference or event, and then essentially, like you say, just kind of chuck it away and maybe reuse it next year, or just don't worry about it. And it's not taking a huge amount of time out.
No, not at all. No. I mean, and I mean, the good thing for most people, but the scary thing, I guess, for some developers is that, I mean, the kind of apps you can produce are on a par with the kind of apps that most universities push out.
Yeah.
And those universities have paid people to actually make those apps, and over a series of weeks and months, 2.5 hours, you can be live on the App Store. And for most people, you can have an app. I want some photos. I want a news feed. I want a Twitter feed. Mm-hmm. Maybe some YouTube videos, maybe a live timetable, some kind of booking system, all of those things that will let you do really, really quickly. It's like a drag and drop interface. It's dead simple.
That's really good. And where is your app available now? Because I know the last time we spoke to you, you were having problems. It was on the Android store, but you were having problems with the iTunes store. Are we there now?
Yes, we're there.
We're there. Okay.
I had to resubmit it. I think it was 3 times to Apple. Google. No problem at all. It was live within about 2.5 hours on the Android store.
Yeah.
Amazon, again, no problem at all. It was live within about 4 hours. Apple were very kind of particular. They wanted functionality that was unique to a phone. And I was like, well, okay, fine. I mean, that's why I started experimenting with that little kind of forum thing, basically, because I was just trying to kind of get through the hoops they kept put. So eventually they said, yep, fine, you can get it on there. So I was quite relieved. But
because you mentioned something last time, I think, as well, about a fairly extortionate amount of money they were charging.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean,
have you had no choice?
You have to pay that. I mean, well, there is an alternative. I'll come to that in a second. But yeah, if you want a native app, like one that's installed on your device, and you want people to be able to access it via the official store, the App Store, you have to pay Apple a certain amount of money. I think it was like 60 quid. I can't remember what it was.
That was a year, wasn't it?
For a year, yeah. Whereas Google just wanted I think they wanted something like 20 quid for life.
Yeah.
You know, so it's much more appealing to engage with Android than iOS, but. You know, I said, well, okay, I'll give it a go and I'll see what happens. I mean, what I'll probably end up doing is I'll have a look and see what the figures are like.
Of course, yeah.
Next year, and if because of the app itself is free to download, if the numbers aren't high enough to justify it, I won't bother updating it on the Apple Store. You know, but if you don't want to pay the money to Google and Apple, you've got a couple of options. You can host your app yourself if it's an Android app, but most individuals won't. You have to disable the security settings on your device to be able to install what's called install apps from an unknown source. So it's possible, but you'll probably find that only a very small minority of your customers will do that. The other options you've got is you can build what's called a web app as opposed to a native app. So this is an app that's essentially a website, but it's formatted in a certain way so it looks good on a small mobile phone.
Right, yeah.
So an example of this would be Facebook. If you go to Facebook on your mobile, the Facebook page on your mobile on the web browser looks different to how it would look on the web browser on your computer. Yeah. Because it's been formatted a certain way. So if you wanted to make a mobile web app, there's 2 really nice options. The first one is a service called Yapp, Y-A-P-P. Again, that lets you make mobile websites. But my favourite is Google, to be honest, Google Sites, because they have a whole lot of mobile templates.
Oh, right, okay.
And the nice thing about Google is if you know how to use Google Sites to make a main website, there is no learning curve. It's exactly the same interface, exactly the same tools. You can do exactly the same things to make yourself a Google mobile-friendly website.
All right, okay.
So again, you've got options. So particularly for those events, if people go, well, I want to make an app, but you know what, I'm not paying. I'm not going to have it listed. You can just go over to Google Sites. If you just put in a search for Google Sites mobile, you'll find they've got Google have made a special page with these templates on. You just click on the one you want, and you're good to go. And then that just works on anything without having to list it on any app store.
Oh, that's fantastic. So the apps are up and running and they're ready, and they're basically out there in the big wide world.
Yep.
I mean, I guess the next thing to move on to is, how do you let people know? How do you? I mean, that's probably the most important thing. Is once you've done all this fantastic work, it's no good just letting it sit there and hope people stumble upon it. The next thing is, how do you get people in to actually access the stuff that you want them to see?
Yeah, I mean, partly it's about having a website that's easy to use. I mean, and that's why I've spent so much time trying to get it just right. The other part is I'll have, once someone subscribes to one of my social networks, whether whatever that might be, I've got, again, using the similar system to have before, Google Calendar alerts. What I've done is I've set up a distinct Google Calendar called social media updates.
Right.
And in that, I've scheduled reminders that go off at certain times about everything that I'm offering and all the different bits and bobs. So one of those will say, hey, if you've got an Android device, you can download our app from the Google Play Store. There's another one, I've got a Chrome extension as well, and there's an iOS kind of alert as well. But then the challenge becomes, how do you get people to actually come to your website?
Yeah.
So there's a couple of options that I mean, things that I haven't done yet that I might consider doing, and then there are things that I'm definitely doing right now.
Right.
So the things that I haven't done yet that I might consider doing is, you can, if you want to, pay for advertising online. Google has a thing called Google Adwords, which is quite attractive. And the idea behind this is, you've ever done a Google search, and you'll notice that sometimes you get sponsored links come at the top.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, I know a lot of people who won't click on those links deliberately. Right, yeah. But putting that to one side, those links, essentially what happens is that the business has paid Google to feature them at the top of the page. Mm-hmm. But the business will only pay Google if the person clicks on the link. So you can have your results at the top of the page. If everyone decides not to click on it, it won't cost you a penny.
Right, okay.
So it's not a bad deal. You can also advertise on Facebook if you want to as well. That can be quite helpful, especially if you're targeting a niche market.
Yes.
Because Facebook will be able to say, yes, we can target, 25 to 30-year-olds based in Port Talbot who, are into Doctor Who or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So you can target that if you want to. I mean, the one thing that I was told was, although yes, you can do flyers and all this, that, and the other. I was recommended the best thing I could do was actually would be to start blogging and start writing. Because the theory goes that most people nowadays are quite savvy to advertisement. They're quite weary of advertisement.
Yeah.
Whereas if you read someone's blog and they're kind of open and honest, you develop some kind of reader relationship with them. So there's a level of trust that builds up. So they're more likely to come to you with a question or for some business or whatever.
It's putting a face or a voice behind the kind of big business facade that's there, isn't it, essentially? It's not just a big grey sort of concrete block building that's advertising. It's a person who's quite happy to share their day-to-day experiences, and even better if someone, it's someone who occasionally makes the odd mistake, but
absolutely
they always try and rectify. I mean, I don't know, it just makes it feel more personable.
Yeah, a bit more human.
Yeah.
So one of the things I'm doing, I'm talking to a couple of publications who I might be writing kind of columns for.
Okay.
Now that's unpaid, but that's fine because, as far as I'm concerned, I'm putting the time in, and my kind of payback, if you like, is it's free advertising. Yeah. But it's the idea is it's building up that kind of relationship, which is what I want to do, and making people aware more than anything. Mm-hmm. And like I said, the blog thing. I mean, my intention is to blog regularly. At the moment, it hasn't happened just because I've been doing all this business plan and websites and all this other stuff.
Yeah, of course.
But hopefully, once I've done all that and it all settles down, my intention is to blog regularly. I'm kicking around the idea of doing either a podcast or something on YouTube. I don't know yet. I haven't quite worked that one out.
Right.
And I've also been playing around with Instagram as well. Again, so it's just about kind of putting out content on different platforms.
Yeah. I mean, the great thing is, especially for the business that you're doing, if people see you using the software, I mean, it's all well and good saying there's all this great stuff out there, but if they don't see the reality of what it is you're trying to sell to them, it's quite hard to put your finger on it. But the fact you're actually making use of all of this stuff, is I think is a great selling tool in its own right.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the plan anyway. And my latest kind of harebrained idea is
it's not flying an airplane and sort of skywriting your website across.
Bad idea, is it? No. I mean, I'm kicking around the idea of launching a live streaming radio station on the internet.
Oh, okay.
Using GrooveShark, because GrooveShark have just launched this thing where you can actually you can broadcast, you can queue up any number of songs for free, essentially.
Yeah.
So the idea is that I can have this just load of songs queued up, just playing, broadcasting on the internet, and because you can upload your own tracks to it as well, is to kind of intersperse the songs with. I'm not quite sure adverts is the right word yet, but just some kind of thing that says, hey, if you want some advice-free software, you can go to this website. And then carry on with the music for a bit. So that's one of those things I'm kicking around the idea. And the appeal of that is, again, it's something that I can set up in the morning and just leave running.
Yeah.
It'll just work.
Yeah.
So I think that's the trick with all this stuff. Is the technology is great, but if it means you're spending hours and hours and hours chained to a computer or a smartphone or whatever, it's not actually that helpful, because most of the groundwork that needs to be done is face to face and phoning people.
Yeah.
That's the main thing.
Yeah, and you found that, have you, that kind of as much as we're advocates for all things technology, at the end of the day you can't beat occasionally just picking up the phone and talking to somebody and selling your wares in the good old fashioned way that you always would have done. Yeah. And you found that is the case.
The lesson I had to learn very quickly was that I need to speak to the right person. That was very important. The one thing actually I'm going to put this on my blog as well. I had to do mail merges.
Okay.
So there's a really nice tool for doing mail merges with Google Mail. So that's what I've been using to basically send out an email to all of the schools in various counties, because I haven't got time to email 500. I think I've emailed about 2,500 schools at the moment. But
right.
If I was to actually do that manually, I'd be here till next year. So it was just a case of you write the draft, you give it a list of emails, and it does the business. That's been really helpful. But yeah, speaking to people and speaking to the right people is important. And the other thing I've done, which is proving to be quite helpful, is there's a service called MailChimp.
Okay.
And it lets businesses and individuals as well set up regular email newsletters, but they're not. They're formatted nicely so that you can put like pictures in, and it's like a little flyer essentially.
Yeah.
But MailChimp's a free service. There are paid for options as well. Once you hit a certain number of subscribers, you have to start paying. I think it's 1,000. I don't think I'm anywhere near that, so I'm okay. But for most small to kind of medium businesses, they won't ever have to pay anything. But you can say to your customers, look, if you want to be updated about the stuff that we're doing, subscribe to our newsletter, and then you'll get a little email come through whenever you want to. Because what I was finding was, although I put a lot of things out on social media, people don't have time to keep checking Twitter and this, that, and the other. So this was a kind of response for those kind of people to say, well, okay, that's fine. If you don't want to keep checking stuff, no problem. If you subscribe to the newsletter, then I guarantee you'll get one email a day, and that email will contain 5 free tools that you can use, and that's it.
Brilliant.
And then if you don't like it, you can unsubscribe, no problem at all.
The worst that happens is you get an extra email in your inbox and you have to click delete.
Yep.
That's the worst that happens, essentially.
And then you can hit unsubscribe if you don't.
But you don't miss the stuff that
absolutely,
because you wouldn't subscribe. One would assume you wouldn't subscribe to this email unless you particularly wanted some free tools and apps.
Yes.
So at the very worst, you read it. There's nothing you want. You delete it and wait for the next edition, and so on and so forth.
Yes, and it's. The other nice thing about MailChimp is for kind of business owners. There's a free app that you can get that lets you check out how many people are subscribing and what they're looking at and what they're clicking on, and you can use it for selling stuff as well. You can build in item purchases within the newsletter itself, a bit like Amazon might do.
Right. Okay.
Say, we've got a special offer on, click here to buy, sort of thing. But say for me, what I use it for is I essentially have it hooked up to my blog, the RSS feed from my blog, so that the stuff that gets pushed out on my blog automatically feeds into the newsletter again. So I'm not sat there composing emails to people.
Which is pretty much the next question I was going to ask, because if you're going to send out something every day, that sounds like a lot of work. Yeah. But if it's tied in, as a lot of these things tend to be tied into one original posting that then fires out in a number of directions, it just makes your life easier, but it still doesn't reduce the kind of target populace that you're sending your flyers or whatever else it might be out to.
No, and that's the nice thing. I can do it, and I know people. I think I checked my subscriber list last night, and there was something like 160 people have subscribed to it in the last 4 weeks, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about it is I don't have to worry about it. I just know it goes out, no problem at all, and I don't have to think about it. And if people then contact me off the back of that, then great.
Yeah.
But if they choose not to, that's fine too. They've got the resources they wanted. So.
Yeah. Are you finding that social networking is proving beneficial for you? How are you using it, and what social networking sites are you using? I guess are the questions I'd want to ask.
Okay. Yes. I'm using it.
And can you expand on your answers? No, I'm joking.
To be honest, it's absolutely vital.
Yes.
The two big ones are still Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah.
Those are the big ones. Twitter especially is incredibly useful. And the reason why I like Twitter so much is because it allows me to talk to key individuals and almost bypass the systems that would be traditionally in the way.
Right.
You know, rather than saying I've got to phone up a reception and speak to someone who then has to pass me through, I can just tweet the person who I want to get a message to. So that's been incredibly useful.
Yes.
I'm hoping that in time the reverse will also be true. So people will feel that they can just kind of tweet me via the Paul Zealand Twitter account and know they're going to get a response pretty quick. Facebook is very useful. Although I tend to find the most activity I get on that is at weekends. It seems to be one of those things where people, when you log into Facebook, if you've got a Facebook fan page, it says, it tells you how many people have seen particular posts.
Yeah.
And again, these things are all automated from the blog, so I don't worry about it. But then I might log in one day and I can see, on a Thursday, 23 people saw this post and 42 people. On a Saturday, 250 people saw this post. So if I was if I was kind of really thinking about it, I would say, right, I'm gonna put all my Facebook stuff on the weekend, but it would be too much.
Yeah.
I mean, the big one at the moment, which is kind of bubbling away, is Pinterest.
Right.
Now, Pinterest is actually proving to be quite popular, particularly with the creative industries, because you can put photographs on there. The majority of its users tend to be female, but the idea behind it is if you put something interesting or funny or that looks nice, people can then repin it. But there was an article recently which was basically talking about the half-life of various posts, and what it was saying was that the half-life of a Pinterest post is much, much longer than that of a tweet.
Right,
or a message
okay.
on Facebook. Particularly because it's almost like with Pinterest, if you put something up there, your pin, your photograph, your image can go viral within Pinterest itself.
Right.
So it gives people, it gives the things you're putting out there the potential to last for much longer, to get much broader exposure than perhaps something on Twitter would, because there's so many tweets coming in every second.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, social media is absolutely essential for certainly for what I do. I mean, if I hadn't have engaged with social media for the last 5 years, I wouldn't have been able to do what I'm doing now with the business side of things, because it was through the social media contacts that I got that I was able to put those online surveys out and I just reach out to people and go, well, what do you think?
Yeah.
I would have been kind of scrabbling around in the dark, to be honest.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, I've been very lucky in that. I mean, because at the time people were saying to me, well, why are you calling it Paul Zealand Resources? Why don't you call it something a bit more, catchy or techy or whatever? But my response was, well, if I've got 2,000 followers on Twitter, I'd be crazy to lose those over a name. I'd rather go to those people and go, yeah, that name I've been using? Well, I'm now doing this.
Yeah.
But yeah, social media's been absolutely essential. But like I say, the main thing that I'm saying to people is get your head around social media, but then get your head around IFT, because it will save you so much hassle.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people like dashboards like Hootsuite. Hootsuite is good. But again, it's a bit like, I've seen in The Matrix when he's kind of seeing all the code come down the screen. It gets a bit like that after a while.
Right.
And it's all a bit, for me anyway, and this is coming from someone who loves technology, who lives and breathes this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't like things like TweetDeck and Hootsuite because it's too much information. I can't focus on it, so I'd much rather have things automated and just be pushed out. And then if people want to contact me via any of those social media resources, they can do, but then my phone will beep at me and I'll respond to that individual person. So I don't have time or indeed the inclination to sit there and watch all of the other stuff that's happening on Twitter and Facebook and all that kind of stuff. No, I'm putting stuff out there for people, and if people want to reach out to me, then great, fine, no problem at all. But it's quite rare that I have the time to kind of sit there and watch Twitter.
Yes.
And kind of interject in discussions and debates and stuff, because I'm like, actually, no, I've got things to do.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. If you can just pick and choose the key stuff that you want to actually see and is beneficial to you, then why not whittle that stuff out and use something like IFT to do that? Yeah. I mean, that's the great thing about IFT is, not only does it kind of, the functionality of it allows you to free yourself up a lot of time, but people have taken the time and the effort to create all the recipes and whatever for you as well. So all the stuff that ties things together is essentially there in one shape or another. It's just you tying those loose ends together to make it work as best for you as you can do.
And I'm very jealous because yesterday they released IFT for iPhone. I'm hoping an Android one is coming out shortly.
Yes.
But that looks very good because you can automate things on your phone.
Yeah.
Which then links back out to your various social media websites as well. So
and obviously, when we say yesterday, because we're 7 or 8 weeks behind on this, you'll be thinking, "What? That came out ages ago." But
it's July 12th today, so they released it. It's rather good.
Absolutely. We can't really kind of move away from social networking and business without talking a little bit about LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, have you found that to be beneficial in any way for what you're doing so far, or has it not quite proved its worth as yet?
Do you know what I have?
Okay.
And it's only since I started doing this whole idea of doing a business that it's really become useful. I mean, when I was, working for the university, it didn't really have much relevance. It's been very interesting watching more and more people come onto LinkedIn because more and more people are kind of actively looking for opportunities and jobs and that kind of thing. I mean, but the main thing that I found with LinkedIn is it's what I did with LinkedIn. I've got my own profile on LinkedIn, but I've also set up a business profile for Paul Zealand Resources on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah.
And so I say to people, right, you can either follow me as an individual or you can follow the business, and it doesn't really matter which one you follow because the same alerts get pushed out on both channels because it's all coming from the blog anyway. No problem at all. But what I have had from LinkedIn is that people use the LinkedIn email system to contact me. So even though I've got, on the website it goes, hey, here's my phone number, here's an email address, and this, that, and the other, I'm getting a significant number of people contacting me via LinkedIn.
Right, okay.
Rather than any other communication system. So that's been quite helpful.
Right.
For me. And also it's been quite helpful when I meet people, because I'm meeting a lot more people now. I'll say to them, are you on LinkedIn? And if they are on LinkedIn, I'll send them a request.
Yeah.
With the hope that essentially if they accept and they start seeing the stuff that I'm putting out there, they might then think, actually, I'll have a chat with them about this, that, and the other. So that's the kind of the idea behind it. But certainly in terms of a networking interface, it's no good on its own, but if you're going to conferences or you're going to these networking events, it's very, very useful. So it's almost like this thing now where I'll say to people, they might have a business card, but if they give me their business card, I'll find them on LinkedIn on my phone straight away and add them straight away.
Yeah.
So that's been very, very useful to do that. But prior to starting this whole kind of venture up, Not really.
I mean, talking about the sort of the business cards thing, I mean, I know I've mentioned this to you before. I don't think I've mentioned it on the podcast. But I've got an app on my phone which is Card Munch, which I love. I think it's brilliant. And it's tied in. I think it's actually a LinkedIn app. Essentially, for those who've never heard of Card Munch or used it before, essentially what it does is it allows you to take a photograph of a business card that you've got from somebody you might have met at a conference. What it does is it takes that photograph, sends it away to LinkedIn world, and very, very quickly sends you back a result which appears on your phone as a contact, and that contact essentially has all the LinkedIn information tied to that person's LinkedIn account if they're on LinkedIn. So it'll break down all the information on the business card, but then it will show you all of their LinkedIn information, their contacts, their kind of links in terms of groups on LinkedIn, and it just gives you a whole world of information about that person. But it means you don't have to carry a business card around with you, which I think is fabulous. So if you're somebody who has a huge collection of business cards and you're losing them and don't know what to do with them, perhaps something like Card Munch might be useful. So.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I'm using quite a lot now is a free service called Reportive, and there's a Chrome add-on for it as well, and it integrates with your Gmail. And what it does is, in the space that normally has the ad, like Gmail had these adverts on the right-hand side, it gets shot of those, which is nice anyway. But then, with the person you're emailing, what it will do is it will run off and find all of the information about that person that's on the internet and display it in that little advert column.
Oh, okay. Nice.
So if they're on LinkedIn, it'll get a photograph comes up, LinkedIn profile, if they're on Twitter and Facebook, and it will actually then underneath put what the latest updates are.
Right.
And it also lets you then make notes on that individual, which only you can see, it's private.
Yeah.
But it's really, really helpful for me because if I meet someone and I've added them on LinkedIn and I then go to send them an email, it'll go, oh, you met this person,
nice.
on this day at this time, and so that's been very, very helpful to kind of keep tabs on who I'm meeting and what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yes, because I'm guessing you're getting out there in the big wide world a little bit more now, and actually meeting and greeting people. I know, well, unfortunately, we did speak about Digital 2013, which is a conference we went to, but unfortunately that was in a podcast which went a little bit askew and awry and got lost, and is unfortunately never to be heard. It's like one of these Doctor Who lost tapes. Unfortunately, if someone stumbles upon it, you'll never hear it. But we went to Digital 2013, and I know you were quite active at that conference in terms of meeting and greeting people and kind of getting yourself out there a little bit. And I guess really sometimes the footwork is the way is one of the best ways. It's always going to remain one of the best ways to get yourself out there and
and I've got meetings scheduled next week as a direct result of that. And hopefully that will be very useful. I can't say more than that at the moment.
No.
But yeah, I mean, the other thing I'm using a lot now is this thing called AnyDo, which I know we mentioned previously. But particularly on the email front, because it integrates with your Gmail as well. So when someone emails me and I need to remember to contact them or to do something or to follow it up, there's a little box at the bottom of your email where AnyDo says, have you got anything to remember, anything you need to do from this email? And you can just pop in, call Joe Blogs, put the number in, and then don't worry about it. And then, your phone will beep at you when it's the time to call that person, or if you haven't called them for a couple of days or whatever. So yes, I'm using that kind of the technology to kind of support me in what I'm trying to do, because I can't keep everything in my head. Because otherwise I lose the plot. So if I haven't already, so that's been very, very useful in terms of it's almost like I've got my own PA, but it's just the technology surrounding me that's enabled me to do that and be a little bit more productive, a little bit more efficient in what I'm doing.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great. Well, I guess probably the next question is, and we're sort of coming, I guess, towards the end of the cycle at the moment, because we can't predict what the future holds. But the next question is, what's the next step in terms of what you're doing technology-wise? Where are you moving? What's the next level you're moving on to now?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I think the main thing will be, now the website is set up. It's really a case of putting myself out there and making as many contacts as I can, and establishing a reputation. I mean, that's the difficult thing. It's about saying, look, I can do this, and I can do this to a certain standard. And if you like what I do, then come on, let's have a chat and see if we can do something. In terms of the actual where the technology is going at the moment, I mean, the thing that's got me the most excited, certainly, is the whole. I'm very, very excited about the work that Google's doing at the moment, particularly with the Google Apps thing. I mean, I've now had a look at Microsoft's offering. I still think Google beats it hands down.
Right.
I'm convinced that if all businesses decided to go Google, yes, it will cost them a little bit of money. We're talking a couple of quid a month. It's free for education, but for businesses you have to pay a little bit.
Yeah.
But in terms of the productivity and the things that they could do, it would make everyone's life a little bit easier. So I think that for me, that's what I want to try and get across to people. It's about saying, yes, there's loads of tools out there and they're all free of charge, no problem at all. But if you were just going to focus on one single solution, it would be the Google Apps suite at the moment. So that's for me, what I want to do is become an authorized Google Apps reseller.
Okay.
So I have to get 25 people signed up to Google Apps. And they can't go via me. They've got to go to Google, and Google gives them a little PIN code, which they give back to me. Once I've got 25 people on there, I then become an official reseller, which is quite nice.
Right.
And I also want to become a Google certified trainer.
Okay.
So I'm waiting for Google just to update by the time this podcast goes out, they will have updated their training courses.
All right.
So.
You're not looking to become an intern like the self-titled internship film, which is doing the rounds at the moment as we record.
That would be very nice, wouldn't it? No, sadly. No, but I think that I'm convinced that's the way forward, and I can see it. To be honest, now, I mean, you've really got three main players in the game. There's Google, there's Apple, and then there's Microsoft.
Yeah.
There are rumblings that Google's about to release its own games console as well. So the three kind of companies are kind of going head to head to try and kind of dominate that mind share in terms of what's going to be possible in the future. But I think, as much as I like Apple products, I still think, they're fantastic, but I still think there is a price barrier issue there.
Yeah, they're making things a bit too difficult for guys like yourself who are kind of starting out and just want to get themselves out there and get their product out onto the market, and I think they're pricing you out a little bit, maybe.
And Microsoft, there hasn't been a lot of love in the industry for Microsoft since Vista arrived on the scene, and then they released a version of Windows which didn't have the start button.
Yes.
And certainly I know a lot of organisations, certainly big organisations, are looking to use SharePoint, which is their content management system. I don't rate it at all. I've tried to use it. It's compared to other systems that I've used that are free. It's not great.
Right.
So for my money, in terms of focusing on kind of small to medium-sized businesses who want to be agile and have a rapid turnaround on things, for me, the Google thing is the way forward, I think.
Well, I think that's probably a nice time to kind of wrap things up now, essentially, and we're at the end of the podcast. So I guess all that's really left is to first of all say, well, Paul, you've kind of come in as the guest role this week, which has been a little bit different.
Very strange.
But it's been fantastic for you to give us an insight into what you're up to, but also give us some really useful tools that we can dip into and have a go with ourselves. So cheers for that. Thank you. If you're wondering why you haven't heard from Elizabeth at any point in this podcast, because she certainly started off here and introduced herself. Unfortunately, she went off poorly a little while during the beginning of the podcast. So Elizabeth, do get well soon. Essentially, it's goodbye from me. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you again next week on Electric Sheep.